Hello, good morning to all. I hope everyone is keeping safe and well. I am Rofiza, the Senior Manager of Membership and Strategic Partnership BMCC. Welcome to BMCC's series of webinars on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and MCO to businesses, especially to our members. Just to let you know, the topics for this webinar series are based on the responses that we have received from the recent survey we conducted on the implication of COVID-19 to businesses. These are topics that the respondents said they needed most advice on. So today we are pleased to collaborate with Ipsos Malaysia on the theme, through understanding of data and insights, the need of certainty in changing times. This webinar session aims to discuss the present challenges and opportunities to shift towards online and digital research. So joining us are the speaker, Mr. Arun Menon, who is the MD of Ipsos Malaysia, and will be moderated by Ms. Natasha Kamarudin, who is one of the BMCC Board of Directors, who is also the Director of Ipsos Malaysia. So before I pass over to the moderator, just a note, if you have any questions to ask during the session, please submit your questions via the Q&A function, not the chat box. It's available right at the bottom bar, if you can see it, that's written Q&A. So, and without further ado, I would like to pass the session to our moderator, Ms. Natasha Kamarudin. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Fee. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session with Ipsos in collaboration with British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to the Chamber for organizing this. I will be moderating today's event, and we are looking at interesting but also insightful topics that will be presented by Arun this morning. What we have is a full-scale understanding in terms of where market research will be is headed, and also some of the interesting findings for COVID-19 and what is the current consumer confidence index. Over to you, Arun. If you have any, sorry, before that, if you have any questions, please do put in the Q&A box, and I will try to collect them at the end of the session, and we will answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Tasha. So let me start sharing my screen. Hi all, and thank you BMCC for hosting Ipsos for this webinar as well. So as Tasha and the BMCC team has mentioned, that we are a market research and survey company, and information and data is core to what we do, and we're quite passionate about it as well, right? So for today's session, we have divided it into two halves of it. One of the part which is on how, in terms of data collection and analysis, and overall how research is changing based on the needs that our clients face at this, pandemic phase. And the second half of it, we would want to give you some information that we have already collected, that is on COVID-19 itself, and how it is impacting our social and economic fabric in Malaysia and at the wider global stage as well. I'll start a bit with Ipsos. Most of the BMCC members are familiar with Ipsos. We had the opportunity to share about some of our information and insight in some of the past, face-to-face sessions. But for the rest who are new, just an overview. We are a research organization. We are one of the largest research companies in the world, starting our operations in 1975 in Paris. In Malaysia, we are the largest research company with around 200 plus clients, and on an average, we do around 2.3 million interviews per month and collect information for around 3,900 projects as well. Part of the work that we do, majority of the work that we do, is for our private sector clients, and which is based on a specific case-to-case need, whereas there's a small section that we do mostly on our public affairs, which is self-funded by Ipsos, and some of the information that I'm going to share later is from that self-funded angle of it. So as the content, and we are quite happy that the headlines and the requirement from BMCC is the core of what Ipsos try to do on any regular day. that's our vision, as well as in true understanding of society, market, and people. That is like, how do we understand our consumers when you are a brand or a marketeer? How do we understand our citizens when you are a government entity or a public entity or like an NGO? How do we understand our customers, which is mostly to do with if you're looking at the customer value propositions, or how do we understand the experience of customers, how they go through customer journeys in itself, and also the doctors and patients from a healthcare perspective as such, right? So across different spectrum, we collect data and information so that participant like yourself can make the right decision at a faster pace. And this is far more essential at this point when the information is of, that factful information is, it's at scarcity, and the markets and the society is at a very dynamic phase. We have to regularly collect and update our clients on what's happening on the ground. So how do we fit our research or data collection in line with this? We just give you with a snapshot. So these are some of what our clients has been doing, right? So some of you would have already heard or already familiar with some of the actions taken by a few of the entities in the market. So some of the clients that we know is that they have already stopped all the spending on media or campaigns in itself, because whatever that they try to do, as in the case of KFC, right? It's complete opposite to what we've been telling and from the to the general public to avoid. So in terms of the relevancy, appropriateness, and the impact of the campaigns are probably no longer relevant. So they stop that media buying access in itself, right? Then some of them are reassessing consumer needs as such, right? Because if you are ordering through GrabFood, if you're not doing the spending time at a restaurant, how do we change that, right? For example, if you're using your e-commerce platforms, how are we going to adapt as per the consumer need? That's one. And some goes for a longer term, as in the sense of the brand values and messaging. How do we adapt it as per the COVID-19 situation as well, right? And most of it is, how do we make sense of what's happening? Because this is a unique situation which nobody has gone there in their lifetime, and we have to come up with scenarios and dance strategies at this point of time. So most of the points at this point is coming up with tactical strategies or scenarios which could be scalable at this point of time, than actually going for a wider strategy of adopting and adjusting, because partly no one doesn't have the time to do that. And the other part of it is that how can you make a wider strategy when things on the ground is moving so fast? So some of our brands has been in a puzzling situation because if you are from Rakit Ben Keeser, or if you're from Nestle and others, they are puzzled by the fact that, do we see as somebody who is up, or do we see as someone who is making profit out of this crisis? How do we position our brands in this kind of situation in a way to our consumers? So there are different measures that brands has been adopting, which is avoid being seen as opportunity. Priority is giving comfort and being a source of kindness as such. And what we all been doing, like, because if this is not the session we would have presented to you on face-to-face, it's like the going virtual. It's, COVID has been one of the key catalysts in moving digital and going virtual as well. There is way in terms of how do we help people pass time, because everybody see this as a phase, and how do we get out of this phase and support. And some has used the unique tool of using laughter as the medicine, whereas in the case of, at one part we have seen brands, mostly CEOs and the senior manager, appealing to the wider audience and the customers. On the other side, we have also seen brands which is making people laugh at this point of time, so that ease their pain of sitting at home, being confined into specific smaller places in itself. So the brands are responding. At the same time, we've been getting different questions, like, for example, is currently research or data collection or information gathering, is it feasible? And some cases, is it even ethical? Ethical in the sense that should we interview a doctor on a pharmaceutical research when he or she should be busy with treating patients on the other hand, in addition to the COVID-19 minus specifically. Then is current research is reliable, in the sense that whatever information that we are collecting at this point of time, how can we interpret this? Because isn't it a spike at this, or like a dip at this point of time for categories or the consumer specifically? Is it something that we can rely on? That's something which is questioned by some of our clients, or some of the questions that we receive. What should we do research now? So a lot of our clients are confused, is in that should we be researching on what type of content that we be putting? How do we adapt our communication towards the current situation? So is that what we should be researching now? That's another question. And more importantly, what do you recommend for future? So in the sense that it's more linked to the number 3 as well, right? So to start to ask the question, what does the future look like? So after we come out of the lockdown, and what we call it as a phase 1 and a phase 2 of an extended, or like, MCO period till we get a vaccine and stuff. So what do we do and how we should prepare for a future? And most of the time we have seen that our clients are at a loss to see what we should, because we cannot even see the next 2 months. How do we see 1 year down the line? So, and at the same time, we've been asked for information when during the crisis stages, when 9/11 happened, how did the data fluctuate? When SARS happened on 2008, the financial crisis, how does the data vary? And what kind of disruptive innovations happened at that phases of global crisis, which we can learn from, so that we can prepare for future. So this is a set of questions that we've been constantly being asked by our clients at this point of time, which kind of triggered us, first of all, to change our approach of collecting the data, and part of it to utilize some of the tools that we are developing. So as a research company, we are always developing tools and solutions to capture and present information. And we were always going through a digital transformation, as most of us in the businesses, most of the categories in the businesses are. We accelerated some of our tools and solutions so that it can answer better in future. So one of the things is that, this is a very wordy text content. I'm not going to spend much time on it. We will circulate the content so that you can always go through it. One of the areas that we are helping our client at this point is in terms of innovation. And how can we develop new products and services, or how do we tweak the messaging of existing products and services? How do we price differently? Say, for example, if you are buying a Milo at X price point, are the consumers willing to buy it? Because consumers identify that there should be some savings, and then you should be supporting the society and community, whatever. So what is that cost saving going to be? So these are some of the areas that we are focusing on. So if we have to choose 2 products, how can we quickly choose it online, or through digital mode? So this is some approaches that we are taking. It is not, as most of you might be familiar with, an approach called focus group research, where we bring in like 6 to 8 participants in a room. That is no longer relevant because of the social distancing. So we are doing virtual immersions into people's lives. So people are spending time. As an example that we have said, that one of the recent requirements that we have from a personal care brand, where they want to understand millennial men when they face stress, and what are the situations where they will face stress. So with our app called App Life, we can actually monitor how do people respond to different situations. So we selected a group of people who's part of the study, and we monitor the situation and the stress level at different intervals, which helps our clients in itself. But it's also in a different mode. So when we do long-term communities over phone, so we recruit people, put them for this 6 weeks of MCO period, and we regularly get feedback on what are they buying, how are they shopping going to be different. So because there is a significant improvement in e-commerce. So I've seen people buying items which otherwise they wouldn't want regularly. So people even buying sofas and TVs and whatnot online. So what kind of areas are they going to spend? So that's where the qualitative part of virtual emotions. Social or what we call the passive data. data is something which is being generated by people online at regular interval. So it is not actively sourced by us. So that's so this has been a huge advantage for us in terms of any kind of data and research. Right? In a regular interval, people would consider social information on what is the pulse on outside, but now it has been used more to identify trends as we happen. As we are on this lockdown, as the full world is locked down, there are trends which are developing across the world, trends which will set the tone for how we will look into the future. So we are, through the social intelligence, we are identifying that trends which makes a difference at the overall level. And also to monitor customer experience. You cannot probably do an interview or call a person, but you can capture this information online based on a customer's interaction with, say, AIA or Prudential, or like a bank or any kind of service sector in itself. So this is where we are using social intelligence in a big part of our research and information requirement currently has been on the behavioral science angle. This has been a significant shift from people's behavior, from day-to-day behavior. It has its pluses and minuses. It creates a lot of stress for a group of people, but it gives time for contemplation and to refine their approaches. So we are using that in to identify behavior shift, say probably for a packaging for Campbell soup, but also for, on the other side of it, a wider behavioral change happening to people as we sit through this lockdowns and FCOs across the world, right? What are the motivations at this point? What keep them motivated in itself? And what are the social impact? Because the society, though it is disconnected but it is very active on a virtual world, and what kind of social impacts are going to change your behavior in itself. So these are the angles that we will be looking at in the behavior side. Some of the tools, and I've shared some links in terms of some of the findings that we have globally. So we have regular researchers or self-funded studies, and it's been published under what we call signals during the COVID-19 period. And we have the link, I have given you the link to it. You can always go and download the files on how the data and insight has been changing, and insight capturing has been changing. And some of the findings which I'm going to speak next. What is the impact of COVID-19 on our society? Some of the data points that we have collected over the period. But if you're looking for something like, as at the beginning of the today's call, we have said offline to online. So what are the things that you need to be watch out as information experts when you are moving from an offline data gathering to online data gathering? How much of the data is going to shift? This is some of that. And also the behavioral change angle that I mentioned in the social intelligence angle. So you can always subscribe to it or go and click and download this file if you are interested in. I would now go to the next section of our webinar, which is mostly focusing on consumer confidence of Malaysians, how it has been shaping over the period of time, and what's the impact of COVID-19 per se on the wider, the Malaysian. So this is going to be our second part of our discussion. So this is more relevant to the Malaysian market specifically, but we will touch upon from our information from the wider global scenario as well. So I would wait for the questions at the end for the first part and for the second part as well. So assessing the current economic situation in itself. So we have a series of charts. So we'll try to explain how it is. So we've been tracking the consumer confidence in Malaysia for some time. So you can see that it is starting from March 2018 to March 2020. You can see that below here. And the blue lines here indicate the Malaysian consumer confidence with the economy, and the green one for the APAC, and the pink color for the global in itself, right? So as you might notice that the consumer confidence in Malaysia was at its highest in May, June, July, August when it comes to the economic situation per se. So September 2018, as we noticed, has the highest in terms of consumer confidence. So this is an immediate resurgence in the positivity on the economy after the election of that government at that point of time. And you can see that it has been dropping steadily over the times from since 2019 itself. So in the last 2 years, the lowest point that we have seen in terms of economics situation, which the question you can see on the left slide. Now thinking about our current economic situation, how would you recommend the current economic situation on a scale? People who are saying very good or somewhat good. So you can see that around 40% in May, as an April-May period, just before the election of that government, we have seen that that's at 40%. That was one of the lowest points that we have seen before. And it has gone to all the way till somewhere close to 65%, and it's been sliding down over the months. And now we have gone way below 40 as well. So somewhere around 36 to 37% of the Malaysians are only confident about their economic situation in this country. So it's not just the COVID-19, there has been a steep decline over the period of time. And the biggest was somewhere between August to December last year. And then it continues with a slide down with COVID-19 as well. You can see that overall APAC as Asia Pacific as a region as well is being sliding down, but Malaysia is sliding down at a much faster rate for the last few months. This is very important for all the brands and the marketeers, is that whether the question of compared to 6 months ago, are you or now are less comfortable making a purchase of a home or a car. And this was on a global level, its average is around 40%. And in Malaysia, again, this is reached to around 50 to 55%. So in the period of July to August, you would notice that almost half of the Malaysians were very confident of making a major purchase decision, which is buy a car or home, right? Now it has slid down to somewhere close to a third. So consider from 50% to now almost a third of people are considering that they might buy a major purchase, a home or car in itself, right? This is an angle quite surprising that in the Jan-Feb-March period, you would see that it hasn't changed much, even with the COVID-19 situation as well. So that's understand that a third of the market is always looking to make a major purchase. They might not do it immediately, but in the next 6 months, they are expecting to do that at any point. This is a slightly different angle to it. So this is smaller purchases, household purchases, which is your milks and toiletries and your fruits and vegetables and all like that. So you would notice that in the highest was again in the same period of time, but this is unlike the major purchases has been sliding down. So this shows a different trend, and specifically in the Jan-Feb-March period, you will see that it's still sliding down. It shows a factor that this is been one of the concerns for people. Don't cut their daily purchase as fast. That means that we link it to a bigger factor that the overall disposable income that we have in Malaysia has been sliding down for the few months. And this has forced people to make some of the smaller purchases in itself. So this is the factor of the job security. So the job security has been dropping steadily over the few months, and you can see that people are more concerned about it in the last. So across different trends, you can see a consequent trend. It is going down. It hasn't changed drastically just because of COVID-19 as a situation, but it seems to have impacted over. So Malaysia has been impacted over the last 6 months to last 6 months in general, but even before that, starting from September 2018, there has been a steady drop across different parameters. Only when it comes to a few angles, mostly from an economic situation for the next 6 months, where we have seen a substantial drop because of COVID-19 per se, but otherwise there has been a gradual drop over the time, and we've been going down from phase of like 50% or 60% confidence level to somewhere around 30 to 33% as before. And this goes for the investing or saving for the future, but this has been steady. It's not been impacted by COVID-19 per se, but it has been has a guide down from the likes of 2018 and 2019 has seen an erosion of that over the period of time. And in the last 3 months, this seems to be stable at the moment. So there are other worries also what consumers goes through. One of them is, these are the few which we've been tracking. So financial and political corruption has been the discussion point on the wider scene, and it is still one of the largest concern assets. We do see a spike. So it has gone down in the last 2 months. We have seen there is a spike on that as one of the concern. Again, for Malaysians, this has been, it's probably part of the change in the political situation in itself. So we do see that's coming up. The other thing which is seen has become quite prominent is the unemployment as a concern. It was up and down, and it's now picking up again, partly because of the scenario with COVID-19 presents, the job losses that is expected. So unemployment as a concern has been picking up. The rest of them, which is crime and violence, poverty, and all of them has been quite stable. And same in terms of extremisms in the country. Other area that we have seen picked up is healthcare. It was never in one of the top concern in Malaysia because our surveys generally indicated that Malaysians are comfortable with the healthcare system in the country in itself, but the healthcare as a concern, of course, because of the pandemic. So this is some of the concerns. So the main changes what we have seen for Malaysians is in terms of the financial, political corruption, unemployment, and healthcare. We collected through our coronavirus polling, which is specific on COVID-19, some information that might be relevant to you. And there is a details indicated study which covers different markets and how it is impacting behavior as well. So I'm only giving a bit of a snapshot of what it is, because since it is information, and you can always purchase that if you need, in terms of the attitude and behavior shift of starting with we have seen a steady increase, and we've been tracking the consumer opinion over the period of time. So this is a data that we released just before the extension of MCO. We say that 95% of the Malaysians, so when we did a survey among 1,000 people in Malaysia around 18 plus years of age and across the nation, we know that 95% of the Malaysians seems to be appreciating or supporting the quarantine or the self-isolation measure under MCO. This is something which was shared with the government and different ministries, including Ministry of Health and Prime Minister's Office and others as well, which support their decision making in general. So the overall, there has been a support for COVID. It's a COVID-19 related isolation, self-isolation, and quarantine under MCO. There is a general optimism. 68% of the Malaysians thinks that things will be back to normal by June. In general, we see Asia Pacific are more confident. Vietnam, China, and though there has been repeat infections in China, we see that the life is going back to normal, even in cities like Wuhan, with the epicenter of this infection, but also in Vietnam with comparatively lower level of infection of around 280 compared to rest of the Southeast Asia. It seems people are thinking much confident, and in India as well, which is where 1.2 billion people are under lockdown, but reasonably lower infection rate compared to the rest of the world. People expect, and mostly in APAC, things will be back to normal. The same Malaysia as well, around 68%. The more pessimists are coming from the likes of Japan, UK, and the US, where there's been a significant impact. But even in Italy, who has been severely impacted by this pandemic, believes that around 70% things will be back to normal by June. So generally, the APAC, Asia Pacific countries are very confident. The European countries are a bit of a mix, and mostly Western or the developed nations are a bit of a mix. In UK specifically, it's around 45% of people believe that things will be back to normal. So that majority thinks that it will continue even after June. We do see more or less the same perception across different age groups and income level. High income seems to be a little more pessimistic than the wider group of people, and older age groups as well tends to be a bit more pessimistic than the wider group. But all in all, more than 2/3 believes that things will be back to normal or expect things to be back to normal. They're very appreciative of the effort by in terms of delivering the information, mostly with government of website, which is highly appreciative. The health ministry briefings and the updates on the health ministry website, and also some of the global websites which been mentioned, which is the World Health Organization, scientists and others. They've been very appreciative of that. But media seems to be as a mixed one. So TV news has been, because of course the briefings by the government officials and the prime ministers itself has been, TV news has been the biggest, mostly trusted source of information. 86% of the Malaysians believe it, and they also trust all these governments and experts. But less trust is seen when it comes to the rest of the social media. This is not new to us. We have seen that in Malaysia generally trust traditional media more than the social media. This repeatedly across different studies we have seen that. So the likes of Google, Facebook and WhatsApp and others being less trusted than the government and traditional media itself. And this has been very beneficial for the Asia Pacific countries in general compared to some of the European countries. So we did ask whether whatever that media has been saying, is it an exaggeration? So only 37% in Malaysia, that's mostly people who are young or lower income segment or lower education segment, believe that COVID-19, whatever reported in media, is an exaggeration. But widely, the majority believe that it is not, and it is factual. This kind of seen a bit of a difference. If you look at the chart on the side, and if you notice Italy specifically, compared to the first one, the data that we collected in the February 28 and 2019 period, almost 80% of the Italians believe that whatever coming out the media in Italy or widely global on COVID-19 has been an exaggeration. But it's drastically changed within a couple of weeks. By March 12 to 14, when we collected the data, only 29%, a third of the Italians believes that the COVID-19 related news coverage is an exaggeration. So that has been widely seen in some of the other markets as well. Even in Germany, we can see slight trends in itself. So in overall, so we would see that when the things get hard in the country, they kind of try to realize, okay, so what media was telling is more realistic in itself, right? But fortunately, but it's also prepare the people to be in MCO or in lockdown and take these measures more seriously, because the minute they trust the traditional media more, and that seems to have been much more helpful for Malaysia, because 2/3 of the Malaysians believe that there was no exaggeration. This is something to be taken. So that's information that we covered. This is a study around 1,000 individuals across Malaysia from March 29, and we have repeated. So if you are interested, please feel to contact my colleague Niktasha, who has been moderating, and myself as well through BMCC or otherwise. We are always willing to help you. There's more information which is very specific to brands. So if you're a brand, are they purchasing online, offline? Those information is available as well. So what we would want to tell is that the role of just to finalize my session today is that we would need much confidence on what the next steps to be done, and data and information is the only tool that we have currently help us to be sure at this point of time when things are moving at much faster pace, and being sure help you to make a confident decisions when it comes to your business or when it comes to your society per se as well. So thank you for listening to us. This deck will be available to all of you after this session through BMCC. And if you have any question, feel free to ask us.
Thank you, Arun. And thank you everyone for listening. Tasha here back again. Okay, we have two questions, Arun, with regards to the presentation before I summarize. Question one is for the Consumer Confidence Index, how big was the size of the survey?
So consumer confidence is something that we cover on a monthly basis. So in all in all in an year, so just a second, I clicked on the wrong button. So all in all, we cover somewhere close to around 3,600 in a year as a total sample. So the sample has been distributed by every week, around 100 to 150 every week. So in total, we cover somewhere close to that amount.
Okay, and the second question is, how do you see the confidence level going post-March 2020? After NCO, so it has to be after April now, especially in major purchases versus investings and savings.
So there is two angles which we have seen. So the facts related to job and economy, the concerns related to economy and jobs is quite severe in itself. But we need to see in Malaysia from two angles. So I always tell my colleagues across the world in itself. So before starting COVID-19 itself, so Malaysia has recorded one of the lowest quarterly growth rates. So in Q4 2019 and subsequent months per se. So in that period, so this COVID-19 is not the only concern which is of our economy, of our general public and the consumers in itself, right? So after COVID-19, we might see a change, a slight increase, but there are bigger macroeconomic issues that we need to address as a country to pull it back to the levels that it has been when it comes to consumer confidence. So we might see a slight rebound, but that is probably not sustainable because we have to address wider economical issues.
Okay, please keep the Q&A coming if you have any. Oh, there's another one. In your opinion, how Malaysia fared compared to other nations in managing accurate info to all its citizens?
So we have seen all the surveys, researches, the data that we have got across around 17 countries that we have seen. The Japan, Korea, China, which always stands out, and Singapore always stand out in terms of how the government's been ready and informed. But one unique thing that we have noticed is that the difference between how the Asia Pacific countries responded to the situation versus how the Western world and the US has responded to this disease. There's a stark contrast, and I think it's very evident across the market as well. So generally, when it comes to pandemic and economic situation, in the past, we have seen the Asia Pacific seems to fare well, whereas there is more cohesive decisions and implementation done by the Western world and the US as well. But this time we have seen a very complete different scenario. So after China, of course, put it in control within a few weeks time, within a few months time. But even in Malaysia, like if a country like Vietnam, I'm quite amazed that even with the lesser resources and lesser health care facilities as some of the globe, who has managed to contain it in a lot of sense, right? And even Malaysia as a country, that's quite kind. So they say that Malaysia has one of the highest recovery rate among those people who have been infected. That's quite something which we need to be proud of. And mortality, death rates also quite low compared to some of the countries in itself. So there are different angles to it. People say that we are much more younger population than some of the Western world and stuff. But it doesn't defeat the fact, because in terms of resources, in terms of the readiness of the healthcare system, the Asian countries are wide apart from the Western, the European, and the US countries. But we seem to have done this better this time. And so far, this is an evolving situation, so we cannot make conclusion based on today alone. but I'm assuming that overall Malaysia specifically compared to some of the European and the US governments have done much better at this point.
Thank you. We have one question. This is a group webinar crowd actually. Thank you. Keep the questions coming. So the next one is, how can businesses use this valuable data to manage their impact business today and also prepare for recovery from Ipsos's perspective?
So globally, we have, from the information that we have, and you would have also listened to some of the webinars and conferences, the COVID-19 situation, we generally break down into 3 phases. So the phase 1, which we are in and most of the countries are in, is what we call is the lockdown phase. And phase 2 as such is that there is a certain relaxation of MCOs. So nobody expect to go the things to be back to normal in May or June. That is like very wishful thinking. So we would expect things to normalize over the period of around 12 months. That's what everybody is expecting, if not longer. In that 12 months, we would see countries lapsing back to MCO. That's what we have seen in Singapore, as in the sense that they were almost out of it, then they went back. And we also see those kind of situation. So there are some kind of measures in place, some kind of measures as enforced in over the period of time. Then within 12 months of the time, then there is a certain amount of immunity in the in general, or we have what we call the vaccine has been identified. So that's a different phase. So we want organizations and like businesses to be prepared for all these 3 phases in itself, right? The phase 1 is in a particular phases where limited things can be done and everything has to be done in virtual. And the phase 2 is you need information, because a grandmother who has learned now how to shop online, would she go back to a grocery store to buy it, right? So that's something which you need to know, because she might go for one or things, but there is some of this aspect as like, if you have learned to do online banking and find it comfortable to transfer through mobile or online, would you now go to a branch? So does it mean that the crowd of that coming to a branch will now shortfall? Do we need that many branches now? So these are the things of information that we need to constantly watch and collect, because it's an evolving situation. So the 6th, we in the behavioral science, and you would have said the 3 weeks is usually the time period that you need to set a new habit. And we have more than 3 weeks, which is like around 6 weeks now. So we have solidified some of our habits or behavior in itself. And it will be a bit challenging for some people to now go back to the normal. So the normal is new, so we need to adapt to it. So on each segment itself, we have information. Wherever we can help you with that, we are more than happy to support with that information. But do treat this in different phases, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And we need to adapt and respond to each phase differently.
Thank you so much for that. I think what Arun has summarized are 3 key important messages. One is that the agility of data is important for this day and age, because what is relevant last week might not be relevant this week because of the shifting sense period that we're going through. The second one is data. Trusted data must be verified. So this is something that we do in Ipsos. We verify the data to make sure that all the perceptions that is collected is representative of Malaysia across, and of course our global data as well. And finally, what is important now more than ever is actually in terms of trust. Each company, organization will go through evolving evolution of the businesses that you're going through, and trust has to be followed the whole way. If not, it'll be very difficult for you to pick up in terms of post-COVID or in the midst of COVID. That is the summary of the questions. If you have any other questions, I believe that Arun and my details is with the chamber. This recording will actually also be shared on both our websites and all the links that Arun mentioned. If you can't find it, please contact me without hesitation. Thank you once again, and it's been a pleasure presenting to all of you, and we hope to touch base with you now or face-to-face, whenever that face-to-face will be. But from the looks of it, the government is taking, from the perception side, the government is taking good care of its citizens in Malaysia, and let's hope they continue to do so. Okay, back to you, Fee.
Okay, I would like to thank our speaker moderator for an excellent session and support. I hope everyone has gained valuable insights and clarification on business continuity. Thank you again, Arun Menon and Nick Tasha. We shall meet again tomorrow for another interesting series with BMCC. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Rufi.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.